Hi, is there anybody available right now online? I can see there is somebody, Madhu. Are you there? Am I audible to you guys? Am I audible? Can you confirm, Madhu? हेलो। हाँ जी, ठीक है, गेट पे दीजिए। ठीक है, ठीक है। Okay, so this is the online class, and we are going to start with the first lecture on the first subject, which is contracts management. Basically, it's the syllabus which I'm going to cover in this class. It is in compatibility to CCS University syllabus. So there might be some topics which might be covered, or some of them will not be. So whomsoever is a participant or who's going to go through my live videos, there's a request that if you find something which is not covered in this lecture, you can always turn back on me. You can always contact me. You can always comment on the videos, and you can ask if the things if you need any clarification on the lectures, any component which is not covered, which you think needs to be covered. The medium of instruction will be English. If somebody is not comfortable with that, you can always check later with me. We can provide the Hindi stipulations also. So the subject here is the contract one. This is my first lecture on the subject. So what I'll do, I'll like to cover the overall, I'll give you a glimpse of the syllabus, which is going to cover the topics, which is it is going to cover. And then if time allows in this lecture, we'll start with the basics of contract, what contract is, what are the typical features of the contract, and to which agreement you can say that it is a contract, and to which you can say it's not. It doesn't mean that everything you agree is a contract. So I will clarify it to you what is a contract and what it is not. So typically going on the syllabus will have, there are 12 components of the syllabus, which are in the first lecture I'll go through. If anybody is having any comments or want any clarification, you can text me, and if your mic allows, you can speak also. I will interrupt and I will clarify your doubts. So this will have, first we will discuss about the reference will be contracts law, which will be the Contracts Act 1872. So in this first part of this subject, we will go through the standard clauses and the study of the act, and we will study that act in terms of case laws available in legislation of India, and some international references we'll also see based on my knowledge, because I would like to explain that I am basically LLM in laws from University of South Wales, and I am a professional having 15 years of experience in contracts management and legal management. I'm looking the concept of legal compliance in an international company also. That is my prime job. So coming back to the subject, for the general principles of the contract, first we'll see what is the purpose of making a contract, why we are making it, the evolution of the subject contract, how it started, from where the initial sources of contract came, and then how, with along with the generation and along with the timeline, this contract got evolved in various forms. Then we will see the scope of law of contracts, where it is applicable, in which spectrum it is applicable, where it is not, and if you have a contract in place, what legal stipulations you can make, and how can you make yourself legally sound or legally viable when you sign a contract. It should not happen that you make a contract and you're happy that I made a contract, but once it is it is applied and it is seen in the purview of legislation of a country, you find that it's no more a contract. So you should better know what it is and what are the essential features. Based on that, you can say your contract is a valid. Then we'll see the concept of proposal and promise, which is the essential part of the contract. I will take you through the concept of what is a promise, how is a proposal made, who's promisee, who's promiser, what is consideration. These all things governs a type of contract. Then how the communication of proposal is made. It should not happen that you made a communication, but that is not acknowledged. Then you cannot say that my communication is in place and my contract is done. So only originating the proposal is not enough. It has to be acknowledged by the other party to make it a valid contract. So this is another important art of the contracts management, that the communication should be sound, it should be proper, and it should be as per the protocol which is specified in the procedures of the contract. I can give you an example. Suppose there is a contract which says that the contractor who is receiving this draft of the agreement, he should give his confirmation within 7 to 14 days of the receipt of this agreement. And the contractor is receiving the contract and he's not aware that he need to sign and send it back to make it enforceable. So in such case, he will be sitting with the contract that I have a legal document in place and I can work, but that is actually not. He cannot, because he has not satisfied the protocol of communication of the contract. So that is another important part, and its main application is in the field of contracts administration. Because if you see a contract, we have various cycles. Like you draft a contract, then you negotiate a contract, then you implement that contract, then you administer that contract or you manage the contract, and in the last you close the contract. So these all phases of contracts management are important. If you are not satisfying any of the phases, it's not done. You are not going legally. So this communication, I will be giving a complete chapter on this because that is very important, and I will request if the persons who are watching it, they should come back with their queries with relation to the communication of the proposals and communication management of the contracts. Because in the practical life applications, when you will go and become a corporate attorney and you will see, then this will give you a lot many things. Suppose in a construction contract, if the if there is a claim situation, suppose, then in that claim situation, there is always a protocol that contractor can approach the employer or the client in case he finds that something is giving the potency of the claim, and he can come back with the estimate or with the intimation first. So if he does not communicate that on time, then he loses his right to submit the claim. If you see, apart from this standard syllabus, I'll go through some standard contracts like FIDIC form of contract. FIDIC is Federation de International de Contracting. It's a French governing standard, but it is being accepted worldwide now. So FIDIC also specifies that for a contract of any claim, suppose you have a time specified. If you find that you, while going through a contract or while administering a contract, either employer or the employer, the one who gives a contract, and the contractor is the one who signs a contract or who agrees to do a scope of work, and for that contractor or for that employer gives him a consideration. So if you are not following the protocol, you do some work also and you submit the estimate, but that is gone, that is beyond the timeline, then employer has a right to revert your claim and say, gentlemen, you have not followed the communication protocol of the agreed contract. So the importance of telling this clause to you here is that communication is so important that a person, if he is entitled for anything as per the contract, he loses his rights if he does not follow the communication. Although it is always debatable, you can always cite some reasons that I could not produce this document at that time. There was a lapse of time, there was a delay, fine. But your basic obligation in a contract to maintain or to comply with the communication protocol of the contracts. So we'll be going through the communication management. I'll try to cover a complete lecture on this with the international references. The mechanism of acceptance, as I said, once you acknowledge and accept, then the contract becomes binding. And the communication of revocation of proposal and acceptance. You can always revoke if something you are not agreeing to before the signing or accepting to the contract. Because if you accept a contract, then there is only one way. There are generally two ways. to come out of that contract. Either you complete that contract or close that contract, like you discharge all your contractual obligations, get your consideration and close it, or else you can terminate the contract if you don't want to proceed. The termination can be on grounds of your convenience, any insolvency situation, any breach of contractual obligation. These are certain basics that we'll also go through in detail in later. So the revocation is possible before going into contract or before signing the contract, because once you agree to the contract, then there are only two ways, as I say: either you perform and close, or you terminate. In such case, based on the situation, you will be required either to pay for the settlement, or if it is not your fault or it's a fault of other party, then he will be required to settle the things with you. Okay, then consideration. Consideration we'll take in detail, but as of now, consideration, understand that it is something what you got for executing your scope of services or work or supplying any material, whatever the contract is for. And then we'll see the doctrine of privity of contract, the right to sue each other in a contract, and the limiting of the contract. A contract is between X number of parties. It can be two parties contract, it can be tripartite agreement. So it limits always, it always defines the privity of the contract, that it is applicable to whom, who will be party to it, who will not be party to it, who will be third parties to the contract. So that concept we'll see. Then lawfulness of object and consideration. An example here, which is my favorite example, that me and you, two persons, cannot make an agreement among us for selling Taj Mahal. What is limiting us here? The things limiting us here is the lawfulness, and specifically the lawfulness of consideration. The consideration should be judgeable, reasonable, and it has to be tangible. You cannot accept for something, giving something for doing something which is beyond the reasonableness. You cannot ask a person that you make a house for me and I'll give you the post of Prime Minister of India. Are you allowed to do so? What is stopping you? The lawfulness, the legality. You cannot make such an agreement just like that. So you have to follow the lawfulness of object. What is the object of the contract? What is the goal of the contract? What for the contract is being done? And the consideration, what you are going to pay or what you are going to receive as a contractor for doing the contract. So these things has to be lawful. Then capacity of doing the contract. You cannot just like go to a child and ask him, okay, I'll give you a Cadbury's and then you will be, for the lifelong, you will be a labor for me. Is it possible? Even if he agrees, even if he signs a paper with this, a stamp paper with this, or even if if he's not educated, if he's put his thumb impression, can you enforce that legally tomorrow in the court of law? No. Why? What is stopping you there? There's a legal agreement. There are two parties. There is a consideration. What is stopping you here? Is the legality, is the capacity of a contract. There are some class of people which are considered incapable of entering into an agreement. And those are minors. The person, there's an age is specified. We'll see that later. Minors, persons of unsound mind, the person who is not sound at the time of signing the contract. Please remember what I'm saying, because when we'll go in detail, the phrase at the time of signing the contract is important. It has been seen that a person who's not of unsound mind, but he can still make an agreement when he is temporarily in a sound state of mind. You might remember an agreement made in a mental asylum when the person gives his confirmation. He's not mentally sound. But if it is established that at the time of signing the agreement, he was of sound mind, then that contract is a valid contract. Similarly, a person of sound mind, but if he is unsound in a temporary situation, and if he signs that agreement, it is not a void agreement. Like a person, like I am, if I am drunk and I'm not on my conscious, and somebody asks me to agree on something, I sign it, and later in the court of law, it is proved that it was in an unsound state of mind, and I was intoxicated by somebody else, and it was not as per my wish, I will immediately be absolved from that liability, because that is not in a sound state of mind. Okay, so that is a unsound mind. It's incompetent to go into the contract. Then other disqualifications by law are also there. So we'll see all that in details. Then we'll see what are the natures and effects of minors agreements, which is and the doctrine of restitution. So this all we'll see that they will see some case law in Indian legislation where it is established that that such agreements were made with a unsound mind person or with the minors, and then it was established in the court of law that instead it was a mistake of that minor or his guardians later, but still they cannot be absolved, they cannot be held liable in court of law because the agreement was made with a minor. Then we see the concept of consent and free consent, then standard forms of contract. And here, apart from the university syllabus, on my practical experience of corporate, I will add some lectures related to different forms of contract. Global. In India, we have certain form of contract, but internationally, if you see, there are typical 2 to 3 forms of contract. One of them is FIDIC, as I just said, Federation de International de Contracte. It's a French document, but now it is being accepted worldwide, and the people are following this, and it is very prime in the field of contracts related to construction works, industrial works, and all. Then we will see NEC form of contract, which is a UK based format. So this all will be apart from university syllabus, and those who are interested, they can go with that form of contract. They can see, it will help you incorporate tomorrow at what form of contracts are there. Then agreements declared void and voidable under the contract. This we'll cover 2 times. One, in the types of contract, we'll go through that what is a valid contract, what is a voidable contract, express contract, implied contract. So those details we'll cover. And then contingent contracts, quasi contracts, law relating to certain relations resembling those created by contracts, which is the quasi contract. We'll see that also. Then discharge of contracts, how you will discharge your contractual responsibilities and obligations and liabilities, how it is discharged, and what is the condition of frustration. Here we'll see the force majeure clause also, which you might be aware of if you have ever gone through the contracts law or any of the topics. Force majeure is a situation where none of the parties hold liable for performing their duties or contractual obligations because of the factors external to the contract. There may be any act of God, any legal issue, pandemic like COVID this time. Then this force majeure, it is also interpreted in various jurisdiction different way. That if you see in law of India, it is coming under force majeure. But I will go through a FIDIC stipulation which says that force majeure in if there is a lockdown, the word is specified is lockdown, which we all are facing now. This lockdown, if it is specified and if it is applicable, then the contractor under certain conditions, he can still submit a claim of extension and cost to the customer or employer. And that is not covered in force majeure. So we'll go through that nitty-gritties, that basic details, which will help us to analyze the situation in today's environment and relevance. So that will help you to like develop better when you will be an attorney or a corporate lawyer or something, that how the force majeure is still tricky in different form of contract. So if you're working on a FIDIC form of contract, remember that force majeure still allows you in certain conditions and scenarios to submit a claim and get it realized. It can be a claim of extension of time as well as cost under certain stipulations. Then remedies in the form of compensation. So this all we'll cover. So as of now, is there any question? If somebody can raise any message, if I can see what it is for the participants. Is there anything? Madhu, there is a question from you that what is component? I'm not clear what you want to ask because I guess I did not say the word component. Or if I have said, can you tell me in what context you want this to know? What is a component? If you go with the Oxford interpretation or English interpretation or the legal component is something which is a part of something. So which is a constituent of something. So what exactly you want to know, if you let me know? You can speak if you want. Okay. I'll wait for your response, and I'm going to cover the next topic now. So what I would like to make this forum a more interactive. So whomsoever is a participant, if they can speak or if they can put their queries on the chat box, it will be great to understand and to discuss, and to maybe we can discover something new which is beneficial for all. Now, so with all this glimpse which I have given you for the syllabus of contracts part 1, is now we'll go to the details of some of the details, some of the basic details, what contract is. So an agreement, what is an agreement? Agreement is something which is made between two parties, that let's agree. When they agree to something, as I said, there are some essential part of the agreements also, which is there must be a promisor, there must be a promisee, there must be a promise which comes from any offer and consideration which is lawful. So these all important terms are related when we talk about the legality of a contract. So legality of the contract means that for making a contract to legal, there must be an offer and conditional offer with some basics and the terms specified in that. And then based on that, there is always an when it is received by which is made by a promiser, and when a promisee receives it, they should agree to the lawful consideration. The word here is a lawful, that whatever you are doing has to be lawful, and based on that he can further take it, they can further sign or agree to it, make it legal, and then they can proceed. So what is a contract? If I say that, how is a contract different from an agreement? An agreement can be anything. Two persons playing in a ground, two kids playing in the ground, and one says, "Okay, you give me your category, I'll give you my 5 star." Is an agreement. It's a verbal agreement they are having. But is it a contract? Is it legally enforceable? No. So the legality of any agreement makes it a contract. So the contract is a legally binding agreement. So there are certain definitions, specified definitions, as the section 2H of the Contracts Act, because we'll go through after this with the basic introduction, we'll go through each and every stipulation of the Contracts Act 1872, Indian Contract Act, and where we'll see all this in details. So the very first thing you must understand before going to the subject is that what is a contract and how it is different from an agreement. A contract is a legally binding agreement, or an agreement which is legally enforceable is called a contract. So what can be proved correct or not void in the court of law is a contract. Okay. So as I said, the section 2H of the Contracts Act, it defines that an agreement enforceable by law is called contract, as I just said. And there is a famous jurist, Mr. Pollack. He's defined contract as a legally binding agreement, or a promise or set of promise. When you submit an offer to a party for doing a service or supplying a material or anything, any service you want to give, and in return you ask for a compensation or for a consideration, not compensation. So consideration, then a promise or set of promise which the law will enforce, which can be legally enforced, is called a contract. This is another interpretation by Pollack. What Pollack did, he's instead of making a generic statement about contract, he has gone to the constituent of a contract to make it more elaborated. Like Pollack defined the contract as a legally binding agreement where a promise or set of promise which the law will enforce. This is called the contract from him. There is another stipulation as per section 2E of the Act, that every promise, set of promise forming consideration to each other forms a contract. So you can make it generic in the form of legally binding agreement. You can say it's correct. You can say it is an agreement enforceable by law. It's correct. This is a definition of section 2H of the Act. You can still say when two parties agree for a promise, then the set of that promise having consideration to each other, and when it is legally binding, it becomes a contract. So this is the form. Is there any questions? Madhu, I think either you are unable to type properly or you are typing something which is not covered now. So this all your questions we'll see when we'll go, because if I start discussing this all, this will be, because today's class is basic. We'll go in steps. So if you have any other questions related to for other components which are not covered today and which will be covered later, please wait, they will be taken care. And for the next class onwards, if you have any specific topic to discuss, which is broad, you can type that and we will discuss that topic first before going forward. Okay. So now for the other side, so we discuss what is the definition of the contract, right? Now, and what are the typical constituent of the contract, like what contract is composed of. So as I say, typical definition we'll cover in the other another lecture where we'll be going what is in detail, what is a promise, what is a object, what is a consideration and all. So before that, today I would like to cover the types of contract because I think that should be the flow. And ideally, we should cover both in parallel. But today, after this, I would like to cover types of contract. Then we'll go with the essential because the crux of the components of the contract I have already shared. So it is understandable. Then we'll go to the legal definitions because once we'll roll through the act, that is important. And when we'll go through that, we'll see the correct stipulation and the exact definition of the particulars or the terms which we are going to discuss. So after that, we'll be seeing the essentials of the contract, and then we'll see the act. What are the communications and other things. So that is the syllabus of this. So now, as of now, as I said, the contract is a legal binding agreement. Now there are certain situations under when an agreement goes into that situation, it it goes into various types of contract modes or the types of the contract. As I said, they can be typically defined as a legal contract or a valid contract. Then they can be there is a category which is a void contract or a voidable contract. Then there is an express or implied contract, oral contract, verbal contract. These are different type of contracts. So going through the very basic is when you make an agreement, you sign it. It has all the legal or lawful things in it. It becomes a valid agreement. So a valid contract agreement in general, if a contract or if an agreement is enforceable by law, it is itself called a valid agreement. Valid agreement has all typically it has all the components in place. There is always a promisor, there is a promisee, there is a lawful consideration, lawful promise. It has to satisfy the legality of the jurisdiction under which is it should not have anything, any clause which is illegal. In such case, that agreement is a valid agreement. Now there comes a void agreement. An agreement. Now there is a in the second and third category, which is void and voidable, there is very small demarcation. The demarcation is what is void and what is voidable. A contract which is straight away against the law or the jurisdiction is called a void contract. Such contract sometimes is called void ab initio. The contract which is void since starting. The example which I gave, selling Taj Mahal by two persons, which are not authorized to do so. Making an agreement of suppose killing some minister or something like that. It's not lawful and you are not authorized to do so. You don't have the rights. You don't have the legality. So such contracts are void at ab initio. They are since starting they are void. Now there is another class where the contract is not void at ab initio. It's not void, but it is voidable. Voidable at the voidable from the respect of any of the parties, which can state it voidable. Voidable has if any contract which has some of the clauses which may be against the principle of legality, then that becomes at the voidable. But in such case, any of the party, it is at the option of any of the party. Any of the party can decide it to make it voidable if certain conditions are not satisfied. So void contract will be since starting it will be void, but voidable will be coming in picture when any of the party goes to court of law and says that this clause in this agreement is not legal. Then that from it becomes voidable at the option of that party which brings the litigation. So this is voidable contract. So which is not in the starting. Voidable contract is not void in the starting, but during the running of the execution of the contract and at any moment of time, it becomes voidable at the options of either of the parties of the contract. Okay, now the next is express contract. Expressing something, documenting something, making it legal by recording it becomes an express contract. We agree to something. You go to a shop you purchase 5 items. You ask, give me a warranty, give me the bill. So that bill is a document, is an express document, which is an express contract in place. So this is an express form of contract. Then there is a implied contracts. Implied means it's not agreed, but it is reflected by your conduct that you agree to that contract. I'll take it with a simple example in a single case that suppose you are supposed to go to a market, you don't have a vehicle. You took your mobile phone and you booked Uber or Ola cab. At the time you have seen that this is the price, this is the person coming, and when you agree to that, it is documented in the form of an invoice, which will be coming to your mailbox later. So it makes a agreement. There was an offer which that party gave, that X gentleman will come in this car, this will have this number, and this will be the price. This was the offer that party gave. And when you press that, you give your consent that I'm agreeing to this. So the contract is formed. This is, and when you sit there, you took the service, the invoice comes, this is an express contract formed. But suppose you are setting this in the same scenario, you don't have mobile, or you don't have the app, you don't have money in your account, something like that, you have cash only, you came down, you just stood against your society. There's an auto person came. Sometimes they ask, sometimes they don't ask. He stood, if it is a sharing auto, he just come and you seated in that and you gone. Did you spoke anything? No. Did he ask you anything that time? Might be not, because I'm going in a particular route, or this passenger, they goes with me every day, so he knows where you have to drop. You didn't say anything, he didn't ask anything, he didn't make any offer, you didn't confirm that offer, you didn't send any inquiry, you didn't made any agreement, you didn't sign anything. But your conduct or the way you presented yourself gave a consent that you are willing to enter in that agreement. And this way, you confirmed that you are going to have an agreement. Such conduct, such your body language, your conduct, your intentions, your presentation, when it confirms that you are going to be a part of an agreement and that agreement is formed, it gives it an indication that it is an implied form of contract. So your consent to based on consent, if you see your contracting types, it is express, which is expressed in form of any document. You sign it, submit it, make it formal. It's a contract. But if you don't do so, you cannot say that it's a void contract, because your manifestation sometimes it goes in terms of your willingness or your consent or or the way you imply. So this is also a valid contract, and such contracts are called implied contracts. Oral contracts. Oral contracts are enforceable by law. If you say something and that is proved tomorrow in the court of law that you said and you agreed to it, it is. Because sometimes people, the starters in the contracts management, they think, okay, contract means just writing something, that's it. No conduct, no saying, nothing. If I say something, okay, what is the proof? No, there is no. Is it written somewhere? No. Oh, then no, it's not a contract. No, you're wrong, sir. There exist oral contracts. If you say something and that is recorded or that can be reproduced in any manner, or is there any evidence of that, it is a valid contract. So then based on the form of the contract, there is another classification where where it can be bilateral or it can be unilateral also. Bilateral contracts in general, when two parties agree, we say it shows that it's a bilateral contract, and it has all the essential features which we are discussing in the start of this lecture, that there will be an offer, there will be an acceptance, there will be a promise, there will be promisor, promisee, this, that. So this all is a typical bilateral contract where the both parties, one party submits an offer or manifestation of interest that I'll be doing this, I'll be giving you this service, and in return you have to give me this thing. It can be money, it can be anything. It need not be money. The consideration can be anything. We'll take that in detail later. So you give me as a consideration, and then the agreement is formed. Fine, it's a bilateral contract because one party is doing something, and in return he is getting the consideration. It is one form of contract. Then another can be unilateral contract. Unilateral contract example, like maintenance of a child from his father. It's a unilateral contract. He knows that he has to take care of the child, and it's not necessarily that each and every case you will get a consideration in the form of monetary benefit or something. So unilateral, where one party is obliged to perform or discharge his set of obligations or his liabilities, and bilateral, when in return of consideration both parties agree to discharge their scope and responsibilities. So let me see, is there any question? Okay, so I would like to stop here with this, and in the next chapter, we will have first a quick revision of all this, all the contracting things, and then we will take up the further topics, and we'll go to the essentials of the contract. And just for the information that along with that, I will be starting with other subjects for the first year also, which will have IPC for India and jurisprudence, which I feel the students are generally very much, those who are from technical side or technical background, they find studying jurisprudence difficult. Then one of my favorite subject, which is tort, law of tort, which is very much relevant in corporate nowadays. So that all subjects for the first year law, I will be starting very soon. So if you are interested, you can join other classes also. By the way, this was my first class and I really enjoyed, and I never prepared anything. So I would like to go with that, and I expect that there are more students in this class, so we'll make this interactive and we can reap the benefits of mutual. It's a mutual teaching, I will say. It's not one-sided. I would like to make it interactive, and this way we will continue in other classes. So thanks from me for joining this. This is Lokesh Pathak, and as I introduced, I'm a professional of 15 years of experience. I'm basically by qualification an electrical engineer from Aligarh Muslim University, then a master's in construction technology and management from IIT Chennai. Then I am an MBA in project management, LLM in laws from University of South Wales, UK. And I have worked globally with multiple companies in the field of construction, then technology transfer, information technology, and agriculture. I have worked in each and every field which is possible for an industrial organization. I worked for 4 or 5 companies. I am certified paralegal before becoming a lawyer. So apart from that, I am certified project management professional. My prime profile is project management. So I'm a certified project management professional, IPMO certified, which is International Project Management Organization, Switzerland, certified project professional. And I'm a Prince2 certified professional, and I have received numerous legal certification in mergers, acquisitions, labor laws, intellectual property rights from Indian Academy of Law and Management. And I would like to be on the same platform in future because it's my interest, presenting and teaching and interacting and bringing something in a brainstorming mode, something, discovering something new. So with that expectation, I find that you may find this lecture interesting, and in future we will be. I'm looking forward to have more of such types. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye.